You're watching this for one of two reasons. You've either been laid off, and if you have my condolences. As you'll soon see, losing a job is one of life's most stressful experiences, but it's also an opportunity for growth and change for the better. The other possibility is that you just want to be prepared and you're curious, and that's okay. Congratulations on having a healthy sense of preparedness, and I hope everything in this video remains hypothetical. Take it from me, I'm a 5-time tech layoff survivor, and the initial moment when you find out that you've been laid off doesn't get any easier no matter how many times you go through it. But having gone through and documented the process, I've learned how to make the layoff ride a less bumpy one, and now I'm sharing my tips with you. Everything in this video, it's based on a combination of my own experience plus also having conversations with other people in the tech industry, because as a developer advocate, I get to talk to a lot of techies. If your intention is to return to work and go back to a technology job, this video is for you. Now, on the other hand, if you've decided to walk away from tech and try something like goat farming, I hope you find that work fulfilling. And if you look at the link below, I link to a story about a developer who switched to goat farming and is loving it. Let me tell you the story of what I call the worst 15 minutes of 2024. Starts like this. On Thursday, February 1st at exactly 8:27 a.m., I know the time because I still have the email, an ominous email was sent to everyone who worked at my now former employer. Here's the key part of the email. It goes like this. If you work in the US, you will receive an email in the next 15 minutes notifying you if your role is impacted or not. If your role is impacted, your leadership will schedule a meeting this morning to discuss next steps. For employees outside the US, the notification process may be different due to local laws and practices. 10 minutes later, as luck would have it, at 8:37 a.m., 10 minutes after the ominous email, I got the email that basically said, today, and I'm redacting my former employer's name, we made the decision to eliminate a number of positions across multiple organizations. Unfortunately, your position has been eliminated as a part of this reduction. My first thought was, wow, February 1st, hell of a way to start the month. Hell of a way to start the year, because it's still fairly early in 2024. And that's when I noticed that I had a new appointment in my calendar. It just spawned on there, and basically 15-minute appointment with the VP of Developer Engagement, in other words, my boss's boss, my skip level, and an HR person scheduled for 9:30, which gave me about 45 minutes to prepare. And that was a very important 45 minutes. By the way, if there are any HR people watching this video right now, I'm going to ask you to please not pull the junk they pulled on me, that email that says, oh yeah, by the way, in 15 minutes, if you receive another email from us, you have been laid off. Don't do that. That is torture. That is sad sack dungeon master behavior. There are better ways to inform people of that. Just let us know in a single email. Just rip off the Band-Aid. None of this stretching out stuff, okay? Please? A lot of layoff guides don't tell you this, but you know what? I will. And that is, if you have been invited to a meeting to discuss your layoff, so there's this period between the time you get notified that you're laid off and the actual meeting about your layoff, normally where you talk with somebody a little bit higher up the food chain in your organization, and they're often accompanied by an HR person. That period is one of the most important periods you are going to have to prepare for something. So if you've been invited to that meeting, do what you can to prepare yourself. You're going to have to steel yourself for this meeting, and whether it's deep breathing, counting to 10, reciting your personal mantra, some yoga, some stretching, maybe a quick run around the block or something like that. You need to work on centering yourself, making yourself calm, practicing your poker face to conduct yourself at that meeting with as much grace, aplomb, and professionalism as you can muster. Now, This is because this meeting is the second most important meeting you'll ever have. The first one, of course, was the job interview that landed you the job in the first place. Now, no matter what you're feeling at the meeting, you want your termination to be as good a breakup as possible. You want this to go as nicely and as smoothly with as much cordiality as you can gather, and you must handle it professionally. Because the way you behave and your demeanor at this meeting will set the tone for your departure. If it's bitter and angry and there's gnashing of teeth, they won't be inclined to do you any favors. But on the other hand, if you conduct yourself with grace, decorum, kindness, and that sort of thing, you may score some extra concessions and a willingness on their part to do what they can for you. And that's exactly what you want. Now, in a weird way, I was lucky. I got 45 minutes between being notified and having that laid-off meeting. I've had other times where I've had no time between that. Anyways, I had enough time to put on a good shirt. Remember, I just gotten out of bed, straighten out my bed head, and I even had a chance to do a quick camera test. In other words, I fired up a Zoom test meeting and checked what I look like in the camera. It looks like this in the background, and I saved it for posterity. But the idea was, I just wanted to be prepared and look as good as possible under the circumstances in order to have this meeting go as smoothly as possible. Now, remember, I've been through this before, so just as regular guitar playing will build calluses on your fingers, which will allow you to repeatedly press down on those guitar strings without feeling like you're running them through a cheese grater or something like that. Having been laid off 4 times previously has given me the mental calluses, the mental equivalent of those finger calluses, to handle the meeting with some, the best I can call it is stoic grace. Anyways, it meant I was mentally prepared when the call started. Now, I felt bad for the VP who called me and the HR person. Both were in the Pacific time zone, which meant it was about 6:30 a.m. their time, and they had a long set of meetings with various people in my exact position, who they also had to have the layoff meeting with. And I just decided, let's be as nice as possible. They're going to have a rough day too. This is not entirely their fault. So on instinct, I just greeted them by saying, look, you know what? I'm sorry you have to do this so early in the morning, and I'll try and make it easy. And that was actually the right thing to say. Now, this wasn't the oddest Zoom call I've had in a while, but it's definitely the oddest layoff meeting I've ever had. And that's because while I was prepared, and I'd had plenty of rest. Remember, I got the email at 8:30 a.m. These people had probably been up since 5 a.m. their time. And of course, they were sleep deprived, and they had a full schedule of these layoff calls for the rest of their morning and probably well into the afternoon. And the other thing is I had a good relationship with that VP, and even the HR person. I'd had a couple of meetings and knew them as people rather than as randos who happened to work in the same place as me. They were both misty-eyed, and actually more misty-eyed than I was, which, was awkward, but it showed that they empathized. And at one point, the HR person was tearing up, and I felt really bad for them, and I stopped and I took a moment to say, look, don't worry. Everything will be all right. And I meant it. Kind of a weird thing to say when you're being laid off, but I also have been through this before, and I knew that things would be all right. I've been laid off from a variety of companies over the past 20 years, and they varied widely in size, management style, culture, and despite all those variations, when it came time to the layoff, the way they all conducted it was strikingly similar. And there's a reason for that, and that's because the practice of layoffs has been around for nearly half a century in the US, and the field of human resources has adapted by developing standardized procedures and best practices for layoffs. And because of this, your layoff meeting, like most ones, are generally going to have these qualities. They're going to have three qualities. The first one, of course, is that they will be brief. They tend to be brief because, one, they're unpleasant, and two, they're going to have to conduct a lot of them. The standard length is 15 minutes, and one way to find out if layoffs are happening is if you've got access to other people's calendars. If you see a manager's calendar with an upcoming date packed full of 15-minute meetings all in a row, prepare. All right, the second thing is actually a line from Yoda from Star Wars, always two there are. What Yoda says about the Sith also describes the people conducting the meeting for layoffs. Expect to see at least two people, a senior member of your group, typically your manager or somebody who your manager reports to, and someone from HR. The HR person there is usually to act as some kind of referee and also make sure that they're complying with HR standards and practices. And then finally, the third thing is they all have a common structure, and it doesn't matter how casual the culture at your soon-to-be former employer is. When a layoff meeting happens, it's going to feel cold and corporate. Layoff meetings follow a structure, and the people running them often follow a script. And the reason for that, of course, is it's meant to mitigate any unpleasantness and make sure that the company doesn't end up or the people there and don't end up saying something wrong or exposing the company to any liability. Layoff meetings, whether it's your first or your fifth, it's always a surreal, almost out-of-body experience, and it can be hard to know what questions to ask. But I've been through them a few times, so what I've done is I've written down the questions. So this time, I was absolutely prepared. I had the list ready. So while the people running the meeting will probably provide answers to these questions, make sure you get these answers and make sure you ask these questions. And these questions include, when is my last day? What is my severance package? What about bonuses or other non-salary compensation, including things like ESPP or employee stock purchase plans or RSUs, restricted stock units, or basically any other compensation that may be due to you that is not part of your regular salary. For those of you in the United States like me, another thing to ask is, how long will my insurance coverage last? Also, there's, when do I have to return the company laptop and other gear? What do you want me to do with my current projects and files? Here's a good one. Can I get a letter that states I was laid off and not fired? That can come in handy sometimes. And if you can get them to do this, this is great. Can I get a letter of recommendation and use you as a reference? All right, by now you've probably heard that, your company is not your family, despite the fact that sometimes they're going to offer platitudes like, during the good times anyways, we're a family here. They are also not your friends. They are colleagues, they are associates, but especially at a layoff meeting, they are not your family, and they are definitely not your friends. Whatever you do, don't sign anything right there. They may ask you to sign some kind of form during the meeting. Don't do it. Now, the people running the meeting, they've got a lot of advantages over you. They probably had the element of surprise. They probably had more time to prepare than you did. And they have dozens of decades of human resources and legal precedent to draw from. They've got manuals and things like that. They even have you literally surrounded and outnumbered. And it's in their best interest for you to wave away any rights you may have while you're in the distressed mental state that is part and parcel of a layoff meeting. And they may be counting on these advantages to pressure you into signing a separation agreement immediately. They may say that they can withhold outstanding pay that you're owed until you sign the agreement. They might even say that the meeting can't end until you sign. Do not believe them. Don't succumb to their pressure tactics. Never sign anything at the layoff meeting. And this is important. As with any other contract, your employment contract, they cannot force you to sign the separation agreement. They can pressure you. So you should say you'd like to properly review it first, and that your review will take a couple of days. Now, check your local laws. I am not a lawyer, and I'm definitely not your lawyer. If you're in the US and over 40 and part of a group layoff, you can take up to 21 days to sign a separation agreement. After the meeting, review that separation agreement carefully and take as much time as you can. If you can, have an attorney who specializes in employment law and have them review it. This may sound expensive, but some attorneys will give you an introductory consultation for free or at least a discounted rate. Failing that, if you're part of a group layoff and your separation agreements are similar, this is what we did actually. Me and some coworkers, we pulled some money together and had an attorney review one of our agreements, and their advice generally applied to all of us. This wasn't my first layoff rodeo, and I've written about what to do after the layoff meeting before, and I'm just going to repeat it right here, and that is you need to fight your first instinct. At least you need to fight what was my first instinct, which was to immediately take all the standard job search actions immediately and just get to work and go, oh, all right, I've got to go and find a new job. Fight that urge. You need a little time to deal with what happened. Now, this is going to sound all terribly woo-woo new agey, but I'm going to say it because it's important, and that is, at your first opportunity, get away from whatever you're doing, get out and go for a walk, go for a bike ride. Try not to get into a motorized vehicle. What you really want to do is you want to involve yourself in some physical activity where you're moving around and outside of the office or house. Physical activity is a key part of this step. You want to get moving, you want to do it outside. If possible, you want to do it in your own neighborhood. And this is important because it gets you away from anything work-like and gives you a chance to clear your head. And by the way, if you have a tendency to walk around and you like to listen to an audiobook or podcast, don't do that this time. No music or books or any kind of interference like that. Experience the outside world as you go through it. This is because you're now dealing with one of the most stressful experiences you will ever experience in life. And it's not the time for figuring out what your immediate next steps are. It's time to collect yourself so that you're in a better position to figure out what those next steps are. As you're doing this and you're going out and about, whether it's a walk or a bike ride, don't do it in a kind of a fugue state. Pay close attention to what's around you. Take note of your surroundings. Chances are you'll see things that you passed by every day that you never noticed before, and that's important. This is good because it's preparing you for what you're going to be doing for the next little while, and that is looking at things differently. Okay, I've been talking about the layoff meeting for the past 18 minutes now, and it's probably a good time to bring this topic to an end. And I will continue in the next installment where we're going to talk about mental health during your layoff period. Join me for that one. It'll be coming out soon. In the meantime, there's a like button and a subscribe button. You know what to do with them. And thanks for coming to Global Nerdy Cheat Codes for Developers.